Hey everybody, today is day 17 in our Bible reading, and we are in Genesis 43 through 45 and Psalms 17. And if you've ever watched a movie and couldn't wait until the peak where things finally start to fall into place, you're gonna love today's reading. And today is where Joseph makes himself known to his brothers, and it is emotional and gut-wrenching and awesome. And Joseph drags it out. And if you ever wondered, like, how do you reconcile with people who've hurt you? Do you just forgive them? How do you restore the relationship? Man, if you want to be encouraged, look at the life of Joseph, because what he does is full of wisdom. This young man is ahead of his years in terms of understanding how to navigate relationships, and he puts his brothers through this test. And you might be like, well, why? Why did he do that? Well, at the very heart of it was a test to see whether they're still the cruel people who would throw their little brother Benjamin under the bus, or if they've changed. And we see that they've changed primarily in the life of Judah. Remember, we talked about why Judah is the one who's chosen to be in the lineage of Christ. He's the one who's going to carry that line. And we see in Genesis 43 through 45 exactly how Judah has changed. Here is a man who pledges his life for the sake of his brother. He does something very Christ-like. He tells his father, look, if you send us with Benjamin, which is the only way we can go back, I'll give my life for the sake of my brother. And he repeats that to Joseph when they get there, and Joseph, sort of presses them and gives them this test, and where he sends the money back with them, and they come back and they're expecting the worst, and instead they're met with reconciliation and love and forgiveness. And Genesis 45 is really the peak of this story, where Joseph says to his brothers, come near to me, and he urges them to come near. And if you've ever gone through a place where you've been guilty, you're so afraid to come near. We were like that with God, and yet he urges them, and he says to them these verses that are just so reminiscent of Romans 8:28, that all things work together for good to those who love God. He says this in the Old Testament. He says, you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. Genesis 45 verse 5. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years. And then he goes and says, God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth. It was not you who sent me here, but God. And that is how every one of us can live through very difficult circumstances, to remember that what happens in our life is when people hurt us, when things are unfair, when we're going through disappointment, it's not about the horizontal relationships. Tragedies will happen, disasters will come to pass, but it's God who allows us to enter the famine. In fact, I was struck with the first verse in Genesis 43 in our reading, where it says, now the famine was severe in the land. It was that very famine that would become the tipping point for the miracle and the breakthrough in the life of Joseph and his brothers. And so, look, if you're in a season of famine, have no fear. God is at work. He's sovereign. He's in control. And listen, the big idea today is relational. It is this: when I deserved death and punishment, God gave me everything, starting with his love and forgiveness. That's really the story of the gospel, the story of salvation. And you want to know how Jacob reacted? Well, his heart started beating again. He was full of joy. We're going to pick that up tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great day. I'll catch you again next time.